There are moments in history when time itself seems to hold its breath. Cities rise from barren soil, civilizations are born, and cultures flourish with ingenuity, art, and purpose. Yet, just as quickly, they disappear without a trace. No warning, no explanation. One moment, they are here, and the next, nothing. Silence. What causes these dramatic disappearances? Was it war, famine, or plague? Or was it something far more mysterious? What if, just like them, it could happen to us? Today we embark on a journey through history to uncover the great civilizations that vanished without a trace, their stories buried in the dust of time. This is not just a tale of lost cities and forgotten empires, but a reminder of how fragile human achievement truly is. Civilizations that once shone like stars, with knowledge far beyond their time, vanished in the blink of an eye, leaving us with nothing but questions and legends. Some say it was divine punishment. Others argue it was simply the natural course of time. But the truth is far more elusive, and perhaps it is not meant to be known. As we delve deeper, we will discover forgotten worlds, vast deserts that once held cities, rainforests that swallowed empires, and mountain valleys where only echoes remain. These civilizations were not just great in size or wealth. They were advanced in ways that we are only beginning to understand. Their disappearance serves as a chilling reminder of how even the greatest human achievements can vanish into the ether without leaving a single trace. This is a story of silence, a story of what was lost, and perhaps a story of what we can learn from those who came before us. In the vast, scorching desert of Arabia, where the sun beats relentlessly upon the land and the sand stretches endlessly into the horizon, there are whispers of a city lost to time, a city so rich, so powerful, that it once stood as a beacon of wealth and might. Its name was Ubar, though some referred to it as Iram of the Pillars. To most, Ubar was merely a legend, a tale passed down through generations, told by wandering traders beneath the stars. Yet, like all legends, there are kernels of truth hidden within them. For centuries, scholars dismissed the story of Ubar as just that, an allegory, a myth spun to caution against arrogance and hubris. But what if the truth was even stranger than fiction? The first mention of Ubar appears in the Quran, where it is described as a city with lofty, magnificent pillars, a city so splendid that no similar structures had ever been built in the land. Its people, the tribe of Asad, were said to be powerful and arrogant, believing themselves invincible, even immortal. They had become wealthy by trading frankincense, a resin so valuable in the ancient world that it was often worth more than gold. Traders from Rome, India, and other far-off lands would come to Ubar to acquire this precious commodity, making the city a crossroads of commerce and culture. In many ways, Ubar was the Dubai of the ancient world, a bustling, opulent metropolis, home to wealth and extravagance. Yet, as with all stories of prosperity, the riches of Ubar came with a price. The people of the city, intoxicated by their own success, began to grow arrogant. They turned their backs on righteousness, ignoring the warnings of those around them. And, according to Islamic tradition, the gods did not remain silent. The punishment, it is said, came in the form of a sandstorm. But not just any sandstorm. A storm that raged for 7 days and 7 nights. For days the wind howled and sand whipped through the streets. And when it was over, Ubar was gone. The city was swallowed by the desert, as though it had never existed at all. No ruins, no trace, no survivors. It sounded too convenient, too poetic. For centuries, this story was passed down as myth, a cautionary tale of pride and excess. But then, in the late 1980s, something extraordinary happened. An unlikely team of explorers, guided by ancient maps, Bedouin folklore, and cutting-edge technology, set out to find the lost city of Ubar. Among them was Nicholas Clapp, an amateur archaeologist who had become obsessed with the legend. Using high-resolution satellite imagery from NASA, Clapp and his team scoured the desert, following faint traces of ancient caravan routes, long-forgotten paths etched into the sand. These paths converged at a specific point in southern Oman, at a place known to the Bedouins as Shisr. There, they began to dig. What they uncovered was nothing short of astonishing. Beneath the sand, they found the remnants of a fortress-like structure, built atop a massive underground limestone cavern. It appeared to have collapsed inward, as if the earth itself had swallowed it whole. Was this the fabled city of Ubar? Could it be true? The media, of course, dubbed it the Atlantis of the Sands, sparking a frenzy of excitement and speculation. But the mystery only deepened. What had they really found? The evidence was compelling but incomplete. Archaeologists debated its significance. Was this truly Ubar, or merely an outpost in the broader network of frankincense trade routes? Was the site part of a larger, forgotten civilization? Or was it just another abandoned trading post? The excavation raised more questions than it answered. But one thing was certain. There was something deeply unsettling about the site. The way the ruins seemed to have been erased so suddenly, so completely, spoke of something more than just natural decay. It was as though the city had been wiped off the face of the earth in an instant. Geologists later offered a compelling explanation. The structure had been built atop a vast limestone cavern. Over time, the weight of the fortress, combined with the erosion of the limestone by water, had caused the surface to collapse, creating a sinkhole that consumed the city in one fell swoop. The fortress, and possibly the entire central hub of Ubar, had vanished in a single, catastrophic moment. But this natural explanation only fueled the mystery further. The legends, passed down through generations of Bedouins, spoke of the city being swallowed by the earth not gradually, but suddenly. Was it possible that a violent sandstorm, the likes of which had been known to suffocate entire towns, had coincided with the collapse of the cavern beneath Ubar? Could both events have happened at once, creating a perfect storm that obliterated the city in a matter of hours? The more questions that arose, the more the story of Ubar seemed to mirror the myths that had been told for centuries. Perhaps in the end, the tale of divine punishment was not entirely fictitious. Perhaps Ubar had truly been erased from the earth, both by nature and by the wrath of the gods. But why did this story, this city, resonate so deeply with so many cultures? To understand that, we must delve into the significance of frankincense, the cornerstone of Ubar's economy. In the ancient world, frankincense was far more than just an exotic incense. It was used in religious rituals, medicine, and even as a form of currency. The wealth of Ubar was built on its dominance of the frankincense trade, which flowed from southern Arabia to the far reaches of Rome, India, and beyond. The city was a key player in the ancient economy, and its disappearance would have been felt far beyond the deserts of Arabia. Some accounts suggest that the rulers of Ubar were so arrogant in their power that they believed they could challenge even the heavens. Their fall, then, was not just a loss of life, but the collapse of a critical linchpin in the ancient world's economy. The desert, it seems, had swallowed not just a city, but an entire system of trade, spirituality, and power. For centuries after Ubar's disappearance, travelers spoke of phantom cities buried beneath the sand, strange lights seen flickering under the dunes, and mysterious places where compasses failed and caravans were lost. Even today, the Bedouins tell stories of cursed zones, where the wind whispers names no one remembers, and where footsteps vanish after only a few minutes. But what was the fate of Ubar? Was it just a myth, or could it have been a real city swallowed by time and the earth? Modern scholars remain divided, but what is clear is that the mystery surrounding Ubar continues to haunt us. Could we, too, be vulnerable to the same fate, vanishing without warning, forgotten by history, in the dry, unforgiving landscapes of the American Southwest, where deep canyons cut through red rock and the sun beats relentlessly down on the earth? There lies a mystery that still confounds historians and archaeologists. The ancestral Puebloans, once a thriving civilization, disappeared without a trace, leaving behind only their stone dwellings and an air of eerie silence. For over 1,000 years, the ancestral Puebloans thrived in the harsh deserts of what is now New Mexico, Arizona, Colorado, and Utah. They built vast stone cities in the cliffs, constructed multi-story dwellings, and developed sophisticated agricultural systems. These people, once known as the Anasazi, were masters of their environment, turning the unforgiving desert into a landscape that supported thousands of people. One of their most remarkable achievements was the construction of Chaco Canyon, a vast ceremonial and administrative center that served as the heart of their civilization. The structures they built here were not mere homes or shelters, but grand stone cities, aligned with celestial events, and possibly even used for astronomical observations. The people of Chaco had a deep understanding of the cosmos, aligning their buildings with the sun, moon, and stars, revealing a level of knowledge that was far ahead of its time. The ancestral Puebloans were also highly skilled farmers, mastering the use of irrigation to grow crops such as corn, beans, and squash in a landscape that seemed inhospitable. Their agricultural systems were finely tuned to the cyclical nature of the desert, relying on seasonal rains to nourish their crops. They created a delicate balance between the land and their needs, developing systems that would feed their people for generations. But then, sometime in the late 12th and early 13th centuries, something happened. A slow, creeping silence spread across the region. The great cities of the Puebloans began to fall silent. The agricultural systems that had sustained them for so long began to fail. The roads, once bustling with trade and travelers, grew quiet. And eventually, the people vanished. What could have caused such a sudden disappearance? Was it war, famine, disease? The truth remains elusive, but theories abound. One of the most widely accepted explanations among scholars is climate change. Tree ring data from the region, a method known as dendrochronology, reveals that the Southwest experienced a prolonged drought beginning in the late 1100s and extending into the 1200s. The once thriving fields of the Puebloans began to wither under the relentless sun, and the water sources they relied on began to dry up. This prolonged drought would have been catastrophic for the ancestral Puebloans, whose entire way of life was built around the cycles of rainfall and irrigation. Crops failed. Water became scarce. The once fertile fields turned to dust, and the people began to move away in search of new, more hospitable lands. But drought alone does not explain everything. The ancestral Puebloans had survived dry periods before. Their agricultural systems were designed to endure the harsh conditions of the desert. So why did this drought break them? Some archaeologists suggest that the social fabric of the Puebloans began to unravel as resources grew scarce. Evidence from archaeological sites suggests that during this time, there was an increase in fortified dwellings, often built in difficult-to-reach cliff faces. These structures, which were difficult to access and defend, may have been built in response to growing violence and tensions between different groups. As resources dwindled, some theorists point to the possibility of internal conflict. As the drought deepened and food became scarce, communities may have turned on one another. Mass graves, burned buildings, and signs of hurriedly abandoned homes suggest that there was violence and societal breakdown during this period. Still, even this theory does not provide a complete explanation. After all, the ancestral Puebloans did not just disappear from one place. Their entire civilization, spanning hundreds of miles across the southwestern United States, was abandoned. It was not just Chaco Canyon. It was Mesa Verde, Cayenta, Bandelier, and hundreds of other settlements. And there is no evidence of mass migration in any single direction. No new great cities were established. No clear records were found in neighboring cultures to explain where they went. The absence of written records or any clear explanation makes the disappearance of the ancestral Puebloans one of the most haunting mysteries in American history. Where did they go and why? There are some who suggest that the ancestral Puebloans did not simply vanish, but transformed. According to some oral traditions passed down through modern-day Pueblo tribes, the ancestors of the Puebloans did not leave due to war, famine, or disease. Instead, they chose to leave because the spirit of the land had changed. The ancient cities, once vibrant and alive with ceremony, had become too heavy with hierarchy and ritual. In this view, the Puebloans did not abandon their homes. They walked away, seeking balance in new ways. Whether this interpretation is literal or symbolic, it speaks to a deeper truth. The disappearance of the ancestral Puebloans is not just a tale of ecological disaster or warfare. It is a story about the relationship between people and the land, the shifting balance between culture and survival, and the fragile nature of civilizations built on the land's resources. Today, the descendants of the ancestral Puebloans, the Hopi, Zuni, Acoma, and other tribes, still walk the land of the Southwest. Their traditions remain rich, their ceremonies ancient, and their connection to the land unbroken. But the mystery of the Puebloans' disappearance lingers, unanswered, like a ghost haunting the canyons of the American Southwest. Long before the rise of Rome, the pyramids of Egypt, or even the earliest civilizations of Mesopotamia, a remarkable and advanced culture thrived in the fertile floodplains of the Indus River. This civilization, known as the Indus Valley or Harappan civilization, was one of the largest and most sophisticated cultures of the ancient world. Yet, much like Ubar and the ancestral Puebloans, it disappeared without leaving behind clear answers or reasons. The cities of the Indus Valley, such as Harappa, Mohenjo-Daro, and Dholavira, were marvels of urban planning. These cities were meticulously designed, with straight streets laid out in a grid, patterned something far ahead of its time. Houses were built with standardized brick sizes, and many homes had private wells and even bathrooms connected to complex drainage systems. Mohenjo-Daro, in particular, boasted one of the world's earliest and most advanced sanitation systems, with an extensive network of drains running through the city to carry waste away, a feat of engineering that would not be seen again for millennia in many parts of the world. The people of the Indus Valley were also exceptional craftsmen, producing a wide range of pottery, jewelry, and textiles, which were traded across the ancient world. They developed an early form of writing, known as the Indus script, which remains undeciphered to this day. Despite their advances in urban planning, agriculture, and trade, the Indus Valley people left behind very few signs of royal power, warfare, or grand monuments to their rulers' traits that were characteristic of other ancient civilizations. There were no massive tombs like the pyramids of Egypt, no grand statues of kings, no temples dedicated to gods. Yet by around 1900 BCE, the cities of the Indus Valley began to decline. The people moved away, and the once thriving urban centers were abandoned. No great cataclysmic event, no war, no plague, and no mass graves marked the end of the Indus Valley civilization. Instead, the civilization faded into obscurity, leaving behind only its well-planned cities, intricate artifacts, and a writing system that remains a mystery to this day. What caused the downfall of the Indus Valley civilization? Was it natural disaster, climate change, or something more insidious? One of the most widely accepted theories is that the collapse was triggered by a major environmental change. The Indus River, which was the lifeblood of the civilization, began to shift its course around 1900 BCE. Some researchers suggest that tectonic shifts in the region may have altered the course of the river, leading to flooding or drying of the riverbed, with the Indus River no longer able to support the agricultural systems that had sustained the cities. The people may have been forced to abandon their settlements in search of new sources of water and fertile land. In addition to the river's changes, recent studies suggest that a severe and prolonged drought may have struck the region at the same time, exacerbating the crisis. Evidence from sediment cores and pollen analysis indicates that the region may have experienced a dramatic shift in climate, with the once regular monsoon rains failing to arrive. This would have devastated the crops that the Indus Valley people relied on for sustenance, leading to food shortages and economic collapse. Yet, even with the evidence of climate change and environmental strain, there are still many unanswered questions. How could such a highly advanced civilization, with its intricate drainage systems, sophisticated trade networks, and well-planned cities, vanish so completely? Why is there no evidence of mass migration of the Indus people fleeing to neighboring regions or integrating with other cultures? How could a civilization that had reached such heights of development simply fade away, leaving behind no written record of its collapse? Perhaps the mystery of the Indus Valley civilization lies not only in the environmental factors that may have contributed to its decline, but also in the very nature of the civilization itself. Unlike Egypt or Mesopotamia, where grand monuments were built to honor kings and gods, the Indus Valley people focused on practicality rather than grandeur. Their society may have been less centered around the ego of individual rulers and more focused on collective well-being. There are no signs of a centralized government or any evidence of a ruling elite. In fact, the uniformity of the houses and the lack of ostentatious displays of power suggest a society that was more egalitarian than most ancient civilizations. This raises a fascinating question. Could the collapse of the Indus Valley be a cautionary tale of over-reliance on one system, one resource? If the river was the lifeblood of their society, then the inability to adapt when the river changed its course may have led to their downfall. But, conversely, Could their society have been so decentralized that the lack of a strong central leadership made it difficult for them to come together and solve the crisis? The absence of any records, royal inscriptions, or monumental architecture makes it difficult to know for sure. Even the Indus script remains a complete enigma, with thousands of seals and tablets bearing the script, yet no Rosetta Stone exists to help decipher it. The lack of written records means that the history of the Indus Valley remains a mystery, shrouded in time. Despite the mystery surrounding their decline, the legacy of the Indus Valley civilization remains. The remnants of Mohenjo-Daro and Harappa are a testament to the incredible achievements of a people whose society, though silent, still echoes through time. Their advanced urban planning, their knowledge of sanitation, and their ability to thrive in a challenging environment speak of a culture that was far ahead of its time. And while we may never fully understand why the Indus Valley civilization vanished, we can look to its remains as a reminder of the fragility of human societies. The rise and fall of civilizations is a pattern that repeats throughout history. Societies that build, flourish, and then fade into oblivion. The Indus Valley civilization is but one example of this pattern, yet it raises an important question. How can we, in our modern world, ensure that we do not follow the same fate? Tucked away in the rugged hills of southeastern Turkey, far from the bustling centers of civilization, lies a site that has completely reshaped our understanding of human history. Göbekli Tepe, a complex of ancient stone pillars, predates everything we thought we knew about the rise of civilization. Built over 12,000 years ago, long before the first cities were constructed or agriculture was invented. Göbekli Tepe is a place that challenges the very foundations of our historical timeline. Unlike the grand monuments of Egypt or Mesopotamia, Göbekli Tepe is not a testament to kings or warriors. Instead, it is a spiritual monument, an enigmatic, monumental structure built by a people who, as far as we can tell, did not yet practice agriculture or live in settled societies. This was a time when humanity was still largely hunter-gatherers, moving from place to place, living in small bands. Yet here, on this desolate hilltop, a group of unknown people built something that defies explanation. Something far grander than anything we might expect from a prehistoric society. Göbekli Tepe consists of a series of massive stone pillars, some weighing as much as 20 tons, arranged in circular formations. These pillars are intricately carved with images of animals, foxes, boars, snakes, vultures, and even abstract symbols suggesting that the site may have served a religious or ceremonial purpose. These structures are arranged in precise, organized patterns, with some of the pillars forming enclosures as large as 100 feet across. The complexity of the site suggests that it was not a place built for practical living, but a sanctuary, a sacred space where rituals were performed. But what makes Göbekli Tepe truly remarkable is not just its size or intricacy, it is the fact that it exists at all. At a time when humanity was still primarily focused on survival, on hunting and gathering, these people were building a monumental site that required advanced planning, organization, and labor. No other known civilization had yet mastered agriculture, and permanent settlements had not yet taken root. Yet here, at Göbekli Tepe, we see evidence of complex social organization and an understanding of astronomy and cosmology that was far ahead of its time. The site's construction is also puzzling. The massive stones, carefully carved and transported from quarries miles away, were placed in precise positions, with astronomical alignment. Some scholars suggest that the site may have served as an astronomical observatory, designed to track the movements of the stars and planets, a task that would have been of great importance to a society that was deeply connected to the cycles of nature. The alignment of the stones with the solstices and other celestial events suggests that these early people had an advanced understanding of the cosmos, far beyond what we might expect from society that was still in the throes of its hunter-gatherer stage. Yet perhaps the most baffling aspect of Göbekli Tepe is its sheer scale. How could a group of people, without the tools of agriculture, without the ability to settle in one place, have constructed such an elaborate and vast complex? How did they move and carve stones, weighing multiple tons, without the use of advanced technology? Some of the stones were carved with such precision that even modern stoneworkers would be challenged to replicate the craftsmanship, and the site itself was intentionally buried. After centuries of use, the entire complex was deliberately filled in, covered by dirt and debris, as though the builders wanted to erase it from history. This act of deliberate burial has only deepened the mystery surrounding Göbekli Tepe. Why would a society go to such lengths to hide their greatest achievement? Was it a form of ritual closure, a symbolic act marking the end of an era, or a transition in belief? Some suggest that the people who built Göbekli Tepe may have believed that the site had fulfilled its purpose and needed to be hidden away as part of a spiritual or religious ritual. Others speculate that it may have been buried to protect it from invading forces. Though no evidence of conflict has been found at the site, what is clear is that Göbekli Tepe predates all known civilizations by thousands of years. It was built long before the Sumerians, the Egyptians, or the early Mesopotamians began to form their cities and empires. And yet, the complexity of its design, the craftsmanship of its carvings, and the depth of its symbolism suggest that the people who built it were not primitive or unskilled. They were deeply spiritual, cosmologically aware, and possess the organizational skills necessary to build a site of such magnitude. The discovery of Göbekli Tepe in 1994 by German archaeologist Klaus Schmidt shook the world of archaeology. For decades, scholars had believed that the rise of civilization marked by the advent of agriculture, the development of writing, and the creation of monumental architecture was a gradual process that took thousands of years. But Göbekli Tepe turns that theory on its head. It suggests that spirituality and religion may have been the driving force behind the creation of permanent settlements and complex societies, rather than the need for agricultural development or the growth of trade. The site's age alone forces us to reconsider our understanding of human history. If a society capable of creating Göbekli Tepe existed 12,000 years ago, what else could they have achieved? What other secrets do they hold? The mystery of the site is made even more intriguing by the fact that it was deliberately buried, hidden from history and the world for thousands of years. Göbekli Tepe challenges our conventional understanding of the development of human civilization. It raises profound questions about the origins of religion, the role of spirituality in human development, and the very nature of early societies. If our ancestors were capable of building such monumental structures, without the technological advancements we associate with civilization, what else did they know? What knowledge, practices, and beliefs were lost to time? The mystery of Göbekli Tepe remains unsolved, but it serves as a powerful reminder of how much we still have to learn about our ancient past. As more research is conducted and new discoveries are made, we may find that this ancient site holds the key to understanding the origins of human civilization and the driving forces that shaped our world. Before the rise of the Maya, the Aztecs, and even the Zapotecs, there was a civilization that quietly laid the foundation for all of Mesoamerica. This civilization, which flourished between 1400 BCE and 400 BCE in the tropical lowlands of southern Mexico, is known as the Olmec. Often called the mother culture of Mesoamerica, the Olmecs are considered to be the originators of many of the cultural and religious practices that would later be adopted by the other great civilizations of the region. Despite their profound influence on subsequent Mesoamerican cultures, the Olmecs remain shrouded in mystery. Their name, Olmec, was actually given to them by later cultures, as we have no record of what they called themselves. What we do know about the Olmecs comes from the artifacts they left behind, and from the archaeological sites they inhabited, particularly the ceremonial centers of San Lorenzo, La Venta, and Tres Zapotes. These centers were sprawling, complex urban areas filled with massive stone monuments, intricate artwork, and advanced systems of architecture and engineering. The most iconic symbols of the Olmec civilization are the colossal stone heads that they carved from basalt. These heads, some weighing up to 40 tons, stand over 9 feet tall and feature broad, flat noses, thick lips, and distinctive helmets. The sheer scale and precision of these sculptures suggest a level of sophistication and artistic skill that was unprecedented for the time. But who were these heads meant to represent? Warriors, kings, gods? No one knows for sure. What is clear is that the Olmecs were capable of engineering feats far beyond what most civilizations of the time were thought capable of. The Olmecs were also pioneers in Mesoamerican religion and mythology. They created a pantheon of gods, many of whom were linked to jaguars, an animal that symbolized power, strength, and mystery. The jaguar motif can be seen in Olmec art, where the jaguar's face is often depicted in ceremonial masks and figurines. This reverence for the jaguar and other animals would become a key aspect of Mesoamerican mythology, adopted and adapted by the Maya, Aztecs, and others. One of the most intriguing aspects of Olmec culture is their religion. It is believed that the Olmecs practiced a form of shamanism, where rulers or spiritual leaders would take on the persona of powerful animals or gods during religious ceremonies. These leaders may have been viewed as intermediaries between the human world and the divine. This belief system would influence later Mesoamerican civilizations, who would continue to use religion as a means of political control and social cohesion. The Olmecs also left behind one of the earliest forms of writing in the Americas, though it has not yet been fully deciphered. The Olmec script appears on a variety of monuments and artifacts, including stelae and pottery. This script, with its distinctive symbols and glyphs, would serve as a precursor to the writing systems used by later Mesoamerican cultures, such as the Maya. But for all their advancements in religion, art, and engineering, the Olmecs mysteriously disappeared. By 400 BCE, their great cities had been abandoned, and the civilization seemed to vanish from the historical record. What caused their sudden decline? Was it warfare, climate change, or did the Olmecs simply dissolve into the cultures they had helped to create? One theory is that the Olmec civilization collapsed due to environmental factors. The Olmecs lived in a region that was prone to flooding, and evidence suggests that the rivers in the area may have changed course, causing widespread destruction. This could have led to the abandonment of their ceremonial centers and the eventual decline of the civilization. Another theory suggests that internal conflict and social upheaval may have played a role in the Olmecs' downfall. As their influence spread across Mesoamerica, it is possible that rival factions within Olmec society rose up, leading to the collapse of their political and religious systems. Some scholars believe that the Olmecs may have been absorbed into other Mesoamerican cultures, particularly the Maya, who adopted many aspects of Olmec religion and architecture. Despite the lack of definitive answers, the Olmecs' legacy is undeniable. They were the first Mesoamerican civilization to create monumental architecture, the first to develop a complex system of writing, and the first to establish many of the religious and cultural traditions that would later define the region. Their influence can be seen in the art, architecture, and religion of the Maya, the Aztecs, and other Mesoamerican cultures that followed. Perhaps the most enduring mystery of the Olmecs is their sudden disappearance. How could a civilization so advanced, so influential, simply vanish? The answer may lie in the fact that, like many ancient cultures, the Olmecs were a product of their environment. The lush jungles and fertile plains they inhabited were both a blessing and a curse. While these resources allowed the Olmecs to thrive for centuries, they may have also contributed to their downfall, as shifting environmental conditions and social unrest took their toll. The Olmecs' mysterious end only adds to their allure. They were a civilization that reached great heights of power and influence, only to fade into the mists of history. But in doing so, they left behind a cultural legacy that would continue to shape the Mesoamerican world for centuries to come. Before Rome rose to prominence and carved out an empire that would span continents, there was another civilization that flourished in the heart of Italy. The Etruscans, though largely forgotten by history, laid much of the groundwork for the rise of Rome. They were the architects of many aspects of Roman society, religion, politics, art, and even architecture. Yet their influence was obscured as Rome's dominance grew, and their culture was absorbed into the expanding Roman Empire. The Etruscan civilization existed in central Italy, roughly where modern Tuscany is located, between the 8th and 3rd centuries BCE. At its height, the Etruscan civilization controlled confederations of city-states, including powerful centers like Veii, Tarquinia, and Cerveteri. These cities were highly sophisticated, boasting monumental architecture, impressive engineering feats, and a complex social structure that included rulers, priests, warriors, and artisans. The Etruscans were not just skilled builders and traders, they were deeply religious people, with a polytheistic belief system that influenced Roman religious practices for centuries. The Etruscans believed in an elaborate system of divination, particularly through the reading of signs from the natural world, such as lightning strikes and the behavior of birds. The practice of augury, or interpreting omens through birds, would later become a cornerstone of Roman religion, as would the concept of the triumph, the ceremonial processions celebrating military victory. One of the most remarkable aspects of the Etruscan civilization was their architectural prowess. They were among the first to build stone arches, which would later be adopted by the Romans and used in the construction of their aqueducts, bridges, and monumental buildings. The Etruscans also pioneered the use of vaulting techniques, allowing them to build expansive underground tombs and elaborate ceremonial spaces that could house entire communities. But perhaps the most iconic feature of Etruscan civilization was their tombs. The Etruscans believed in an afterlife, and their tombs reflected this belief in grand fashion. These tombs were often designed to mimic the homes of the living, with carved walls depicting scenes of feasting, music, and daily life. The famous Tomb of the Leopards in Tarquinia, for example, features frescoes of reclining banqueters, raising cups in a timeless toast, frozen in celebration for eternity. These tombs were not just places to bury the dead. They were sacred spaces, meant to ensure the deceased would have everything they needed in the afterlife. Yet, despite their cultural achievements and lasting influence on Rome, the Etruscans remain an enigma. Much of their written language remains undeciphered, and the records that do exist are sparse. The Romans, who eventually absorbed the Etruscans into their growing empire, rarely wrote about their predecessors in detail. In fact, much of what we know about the Etruscans comes from the accounts of Roman historians, who were often more interested in glorifying their own civilization than in preserving the memory of the Etruscans. As a result, the Etruscans have been largely forgotten, their legacy overshadowed by the rise of Rome. One of the most perplexing aspects of the Etruscan civilization is their mysterious disappearance. By the 3rd century BCE, their city-states were gradually absorbed by Rome, and by the end of the Punic Wars, the Etruscan civilization had effectively faded into Roman history. What caused their downfall? Was it war, internal conflict, or was it simply the inexorable march of Roman expansion? One theory is that the Etruscans were defeated by the Romans through military conquest. As Rome grew in power and influence, it began to absorb neighboring territories, including the Etruscan city-states. The Etruscans, who had once been the dominant power in central Italy, found themselves outmatched by the rising Roman Republic. Despite their cultural and technological advances, they were unable to withstand the Roman military machine. However, another theory suggests that the Etruscans' decline was due to internal strife. By the time of Rome's expansion, many of the Etruscan city-states were already in decline, with infighting and political instability weakening their ability to resist Roman conquest. The Etruscans were also deeply divided by rival factions and internal struggles for power, which may have made it difficult for them to form a unified front against Rome. Additionally, some scholars believe that the Etruscans may have suffered from environmental factors, such as changes in climate or agricultural conditions, which made it difficult for them to sustain their cities. The shifting course of rivers or prolonged periods of drought could have severely impacted their agricultural economy, leading to famine and social unrest. Despite their absorption into the Roman Empire, the Etruscans did not disappear entirely. Their influence lived on in Roman religion, politics, and culture. The Roman practice of augury, the triumph, and even the notion of the Roman emperor as a divine ruler were all borrowed from the Etruscans. Roman architecture, including the use of arches and vaults, was heavily influenced by Etruscan engineering techniques. Even the Roman alphabet has roots in the Etruscan script. Yet despite these lasting contributions, the Etruscans remain largely forgotten in the shadow of Rome's grandeur. The Romans, who absorbed much of Etruscan culture, did not leave behind detailed records of their predecessors. And over time, the Etruscans faded from collective memory. The tombs, temples, and monuments they left behind now serve as a reminder of a once great civilization that was swallowed by the rise of another. The Etruscan legacy is a bittersweet one. They were a civilization that shaped the very foundations of Rome, yet they are often relegated to the margins of history. Their disappearance, like so many others, raises an important question. How much of our own civilization will be remembered by future generations? Will we, too, be absorbed by the rise of another power, our achievements slowly forgotten as time moves on? In the highlands of northern Ethiopia and southern Eritrea, where the dry winds sweep over rugged terrain and jagged peaks pierce the horizon, there once thrived one of the greatest civilizations of the ancient world. The kingdom of Axum, now a distant memory, buried beneath the sands of time, was a superpower in its own right. rivaling Rome, Persia, and China at the height of its glory. Yet, like so many other once great civilizations, Axum's downfall remained shrouded in mystery, leaving behind a legacy of grand monuments, cultural richness, and questions that remain unanswered to this day. At its peak, the Kingdom of Axum was an economic, political, and military powerhouse. Its rulers held the title King of Kings and governed over an empire that stretched across the Red Sea and beyond. Axum controlled vast trade networks that linked Africa, the Arabian Peninsula, and the Mediterranean world. Its cities were vibrant centers of commerce, culture, and religion. It was here, in Axum, that the first Christian empire emerged in the 4th century CE, long before Europe had embraced Christianity. Axum's power was built on its strategic location along the Red Sea, a major trade route that connected the Mediterranean to the Arabian Peninsula, and beyond to India and East Asia. The Axumites traded in gold, ivory, frankincense, and myrrh goods that were highly prized in the ancient world. They minted their own coins, many bearing the image of their rulers and inscriptions in Greek, reflecting their desire to participate in the global economy. These coins, along with other artifacts, have been found as far afield as India and the Roman Empire, evidence of Axum's far-reaching influence. But it was not just trade that made Axum powerful. The kingdom's architecture and engineering were also remarkable. The iconic stele-tall monolithic obelisks stood as symbols of royal power and were used as markers for royal tombs. Some of these stelae are over 100 feet tall and are carved from a single piece of granite, a feat of engineering that was unprecedented for the time. The stelae were transported from quarries miles away without the use of wheels and placed in their designated positions with remarkable precision. Perhaps one of the most significant events in Axum's history was its conversion to Christianity. In the 4th century, under King Izana, Axum officially adopted Christianity, making it one of the first Christian empires in the world. This was not a violent conversion, but a peaceful one that reflected the kingdom's openness to new ideas and cultures. The Axumites were among the first to embrace Christianity, long before Rome itself had officially converted. The Ethiopian Orthodox Church, which still exists today, traces its roots to this period, and the faith remains central to Ethiopian identity. Yet despite its grandeur and early adoption of Christianity, the Kingdom of Axum's fall remains one of history's greatest mysteries. By the 7th century, Axum began to decline. The mighty kingdom that once controlled the Red Sea trade routes and had established its influence across Africa and the Arabian Peninsula seemed to vanish almost overnight. The great port city of Indus, once a bustling hub of trade, was abandoned. The majestic obelisks that stood as symbols of Axum's power lay broken and forgotten. What happened to this once great kingdom? There are several theories about what led to Axum's decline. One of the most widely accepted explanations is the rise of Islam in the 7th century. As Islam spread across the Arabian Peninsula, the newly formed Islamic Caliphate began to dominate the trade routes that Axum had once controlled. The Red Sea, which had been the lifeblood of Axum's economy, fell under Muslim control. The Islamic Caliphate's monopoly on the maritime trade routes effectively cut Axum off from the rest of the world, leading to a slow economic decline. In addition to the shifting political landscape, environmental factors may have also played a role in the kingdom's downfall. Recent studies suggest that the region experienced a period of prolonged drought, which may have devastated Axum's agricultural base. The kingdom's reliance on farming, particularly the cultivation of grain, could have been severely impacted by the changing climate, leading to famine and social unrest. Some scholars believe that the decline of Axum was a slow, creeping process, as the once thriving empire struggled to maintain its power and influence in the face of external threats and internal pressures. Yet the decline of Axum was not merely a result of external forces. The kingdom's internal structure may have played a role as well. As Axum's trade networks faltered and its political power waned, it is possible that the once centralized authority of the king began to fragment. With the rise of local powers and competing factions, Axum may have lost the cohesion that had once made it such a formidable force. By the 10th century, the kingdom had effectively disintegrated, its monuments abandoned, and its once proud cities left to the ravages of time. But the story of Axum is not one of complete disappearance. Despite its fall, Axum's legacy continued to echo through the centuries. The Ethiopian Orthodox Church, which had been established during Axum's golden age, remained a powerful force in Ethiopian society. The Solomonic dynasty, which claimed descent from the ancient kings of Axum and the biblical King Solomon, would rise in the 13th century, using the memory of Axum's greatness to legitimize their rule. Even today, the modern Ethiopian state traces its origins back to the kingdom of Axum, and the Axumite legacy is still felt in the country's culture, religion, and identity. One of the most enduring aspects of Axum's history is its association with the Ark of the Covenant. According to Ethiopian tradition, the Ark was brought to Axum by Menelik, the son of King Solomon, and the Queen of Sheba. The Ark, said to contain the Ten Commandments, is considered the holiest relic in Ethiopian Christianity, and it is said to reside in the Church of Our Lady Mary of Zion in Axum, where it is guarded by a single monk who is never allowed to leave the church. Though the truth of the Ark's presence in Axum remains unverified, the legend continues to be a powerful symbol of Ethiopia's connection to the biblical past. Axum's decline and eventual disappearance from history serve as a powerful reminder of the fragility of empires. Despite its vast influence and grandeur, the kingdom faded into obscurity, its once great cities swallowed by the sands of time. Yet, in the shadows of its monuments and in the hearts of its people, Axum's legacy lives on. It serves as a reminder that even the greatest civilizations can vanish, but their influence can endure, like a whisper in the wind. In the dense jungles of Cambodia, where ancient stone temples rise from the earth like forgotten titans, lies the legacy of the Khmer Empire, one of Southeast Asia's most powerful and artistically advanced civilizations. At the heart of this empire was Angkor, a city of monumental scale and grandeur that once ruled over much of Southeast Asia. Yet, like so many great civilizations, the Khmer Empire's once vibrant heart was eventually abandoned, swallowed by the jungle, and left to the annals of history. The Khmer Empire, which thrived from the 9th to the 15th centuries CE, was a powerful force in Southeast Asia. Its rulers, known as God Kings, governed over a vast territory that stretched across Cambodia, Thailand, Laos, and parts of Vietnam. The empire was built on a foundation of agricultural wealth, which was made possible by the Khmer people's mastery of water management. The construction of elaborate systems of reservoirs, canals, and dikes allowed the empire to harness the power of the monsoons, enabling them to produce abundant rice crops and sustain a population that may have reached over 1 million people at its peak. But it was not just agriculture that made the Khmer Empire great. It was their architectural and artistic achievements. Angkor, the empire's capital, is one of the most impressive and awe-inspiring cities ever built. At its height, Angkor was home to magnificent temples, palaces, and urban areas, all intricately designed and aligned with cosmic principles. The most famous of these temples is Angkor Wat, a massive religious complex dedicated to the Hindu god Vishnu, which later became a Buddhist site as the empire's religious identity shifted. Angkor Wat is a masterpiece of architecture and engineering. The temple is designed to represent the Hindu cosmos, with its central tower symbolizing Mount Meru, the center of the universe in Hindu and Buddhist mythology. The surrounding moats and galleries represent the cosmic ocean, and the alignment of the temple with the sun's rays at sunrise demonstrates the Khmer's deep understanding of astronomy and their ability to incorporate celestial events into their sacred architecture. Angkor Wat, with its bas-reliefs depicting scenes of battle, mythology, and daily life, remains the largest religious monument in the world. The Khmer Empire's artistic achievements extended beyond architecture. The empire produced exquisite sculptures, carvings, and frescoes that depicted gods, animals, and scenes from Hindu epics. These works of art, like the temples themselves, were not just decorative but carried deep spiritual and political significance. They reflected the Khmer rulers' divine right to rule and their connection to the gods, as well as their role in maintaining cosmic order. Yet despite its cultural richness, architectural splendor, and agricultural prowess, the Khmer Empire eventually fell into decline. By the 15th century, Angkor, once the bustling heart of the empire, had fallen silent. The great temples and palaces were abandoned, and the once vibrant city was slowly consumed by the encroaching jungle. What happened to this powerful empire? What caused its sudden disappearance? There is no single explanation for the fall of the Khmer Empire, but several factors likely contributed to its decline. One of the most widely accepted theories is environmental stress. The Khmer Empire was heavily reliant on its sophisticated water management systems to support its agricultural economy. However, by the 14th and 15th centuries, a combination of environmental changes, such as prolonged droughts and flooding, may have strained these systems, leading to crop failures and food shortages. The failure of the water management systems, coupled with the depletion of resources, may have led to social unrest and a breakdown in the empire's ability to maintain its vast infrastructure. Another theory points to the growing pressures of external conflict. During the 14th and 15th centuries, the Khmer Empire faced increasing threats from neighboring states, including the Thai kingdom of Ayutthaya and the Vietnamese. These kingdoms were expanding their territories and challenging the Khmer's dominance in Southeast Asia. The Khmer Empire's military and political power, which had once been formidable, may have weakened under the strain of these external conflicts. In 1431, the Thai forces sacked Angkor, dealing a devastating blow to the Khmer Empire. While the kingdom would continue for a time, its power had been shattered, and Angkor was gradually abandoned as the capital. In addition to these external pressures, the religious transformation of the Khmer Empire also played a role in its decline. As the empire's rulers converted from Hinduism to Buddhism, the once vibrant Hindu temples, including Angkor Wat, fell out of favor. This shift in religious identity may have contributed to a sense of disillusionment among the population, and the changing spiritual landscape could have played a role in the empire's fracturing political and social cohesion. Despite its decline, the legacy of the Khmer Empire is far from forgotten. Angkor, which had been left to the jungle for centuries, was rediscovered by French explorers in the 19th century. Since then, the site has become a symbol of Cambodia's cultural identity and a testament to the ingenuity and artistic brilliance of the Khmer people. Today, Angkor Wat is one of the most visited archaeological sites in the world, drawing millions of tourists, scholars, and spiritual seekers who come to marvel at its grandeur and ponder the mysteries of the empire that created it. The story of the Khmer Empire serves as a poignant reminder of the fragility of human civilizations. Like the ancient Egyptians, the Maya, and the Romans, the Khmer Empire built an extraordinary civilization that reached the heights of cultural and architectural achievement. And, like so many others, it eventually succumbed to the pressures of time, environment, and external forces. Yet, even in its fall, the Khmer Empire has left a legacy that continues to inspire and captivate people around the world. The monuments of Angkor stand as silent witnesses to a once great civilization that shaped the cultural landscape of Southeast Asia and whose echoes are still felt today. Far out in the middle of the South Pacific, nearly 2,000 miles from the nearest continental coast, lies one of the most isolated inhabited places on Earth, Easter Island. Known as Rapa Nui to its indigenous inhabitants, this remote island, with its volcanic craters, towering cliffs, and windswept plains, is home to some of the most iconic and mysterious monuments in the world, the Moai. These colossal stone statues, with their elongated faces, hollow eyes, and solemn expressions, stand as silent sentinels over the island. There are nearly 900 moai scattered across the island, some towering more than 30 feet tall and weighing as much as 82 tons. They were carved by the Rapa Nui people, whose civilization thrived on the island for centuries before it suddenly collapsed into ruin. How did a small, isolated society, capable of creating such awe-inspiring monuments, fall into chaos and near extinction? To understand the rise and fall of the Rapa Nui civilization, we must first travel back in time to when the island was first settled. Around 1200 AD, Polynesian navigators, master wayfinders who used the stars, ocean currents, and bird patterns to navigate vast distances, discovered Easter Island. The settlers brought with them everything they needed to survive on this barren land: sweet potatoes, chickens, banana plants, and the knowledge passed down through generations of their ancestors. At first, Easter Island appeared to be a paradise. The volcanic soil was fertile, the climate was temperate, and the island had plentiful natural resources. The early Rapa Nui people were able to build villages, grow crops, and develop a complex society. They also began the creation of the Moai, massive stone statues that were carved from volcanic tuff, a type of compressed volcanic ash. These statues were not simply decorative, they were believed to embody the spirits of deified ancestors, whose mana spiritual power was thought to bring prosperity and protection to the island. The Rapa Nui constructed hundreds of moai, which were placed on stone platforms called ahu, facing inward to watch over the villages. The larger and more elaborate the moai, the greater the spiritual power it was believed to possess. Over time, the Rapa Nui began to compete with each other, building ever larger statues in an effort to display their power and influence. This competition, while initially a source of pride, would eventually lead to the downfall of their society. As the moai grew larger and more numerous, the Rapa Nui society began to shift. The island's forests, once filled with towering palm trees, began to shrink. The trees were cut down for a variety of reasons: to provide wood for the construction of canoes, for building materials, and to transport the moai from quarries to their ceremonial platforms. Without trees, the Rapa Nui were unable to build the canoes they once used for fishing and long-distance travel. The loss of trees also led to soil erosion, making it increasingly difficult to grow crops and sustain the island's growing population. By the time European explorers arrived on Easter Island in the 18th century, the island's once thriving civilization was already in decline. The once forested landscape had been reduced to a barren, treeless wasteland. The moai, once standing proudly on their platforms, were now toppled and abandoned, some lying face down in the dirt. The Rapa Nui society, which had once been a proud and prosperous civilization, had collapsed into chaos and destruction. The collapse of the Rapa Nui civilization is a tragic story of ecological disaster, social upheaval, and cultural collapse. But how exactly did it happen? One of the most widely accepted theories is that the environmental degradation caused by deforestation played a major role in the collapse. As the forests disappeared, so did the resources needed to maintain the island's complex society. The Rapa Nui were no longer able to sustain their agricultural systems, and their once thriving trade networks collapsed. Food shortages led to social unrest, and the competition over the remaining resources became increasingly violent. In addition to environmental factors, some scholars believe that internal conflict played a key role in the collapse of the Rapa Nui civilization. The construction of the moai had become a source of intense competition between different clans on the island. As clans vied to build the largest and most impressive statues, they began to deplete the island's resources at an alarming rate. Eventually, this competition turned destructive. Evidence suggests that, during the island's decline, the Rapa Nui engaged in acts of civil war, toppling the moai and fighting over the remaining resources. But it was not just internal conflict that doomed the Rapa Nui. The arrival of Europeans in the 18th century brought with it a host of new challenges. In 1722, the Dutch explorer Jacob Roggeveen arrived on Easter Island and found the island's population drastically reduced. The Rapa Nui were living in isolation, and their traditional way of life had already been severely impacted by the depletion of resources. In the 19th century, Peruvian slave traders arrived on the island and abducted over 1,000 Rapa Nui, many of whom were later returned to the island after years of captivity. In the wake of this traumatic event, disease, particularly smallpox, decimated the already fragile population. The loss of spiritual leaders, the destruction of their religious symbols, and the collapse of their social structures left the Rapa Nui people in a state of cultural disintegration. By the late 19th century, the Rapa Nui civilization was all but gone. The moai, once symbols of power and spiritual significance, lay abandoned and broken across the island. The island's once thriving society had been reduced to a few thousand people, struggling to survive in a harsh, resource-depleted environment. The Rapa Nui had become a shadow of their former selves, their once great culture all but erased. Today, Easter Island is a UNESCO World Heritage Site, and the moai continue to stand as enduring symbols of the Rapa Nui civilization. Visitors from around the world come to marvel at the moai and to learn about the history of the island's people. But the collapse of the Rapa Nui civilization serves as a powerful warning about the dangers of environmental degradation, overexploitation of resources, and social competition. The story of Easter Island is a reminder that even the most advanced societies can fall victim to the very forces that once made them great. The Rapa Nui civilization may have collapsed, but its legacy endures. The moai stand as silent witnesses to a people who once thrived in isolation and built monuments that defied their limited resources. And in their fall, the Rapa Nui remind us of the fragility of human societies and the importance of balance between progress and preservation. As we journey through the stories of the great civilizations that vanished overnight, Ubar, the ancestral Puebloans, the Indus Valley, Göbekli Tepe, the Olmecs, the Etruscans, the Khmer Empire, the Kingdom of Axum, and the Rapa Nui of Easter Island. We are confronted with a common thread: the fragility of human achievement. These civilizations, at the height of their power, wealth, and ingenuity, built extraordinary societies, monuments, and systems that have left a lasting mark on history. Yet despite their brilliance, each one of these cultures faded, often without clear explanation, swallowed by time, natural disasters, environmental collapse, or the forces of conflict. What can we learn from these stories? How can the rise and fall of these civilizations inform our understanding of our own place in history and our future? One of the most striking lessons from these vanished civilizations is just how fragile civilizations can be. Despite their technological advancements, cultural achievements, and political power, these societies were vulnerable to forces beyond their control, be it environmental shifts, social upheaval, warfare, or the collapse of critical resources. The ancestral Puebloans, with their sophisticated cities and agriculture, could not withstand the prolonged drought that devastated their crops. The Indus Valley civilization, with its advanced urban planning and trade networks, faded without a trace, possibly due to a shifting river course or climate changes. The Khmer Empire, with its stunning architectural achievements, was undone by a combination of environmental strain and external pressures from rival kingdoms. The lesson here is clear. Even the most advanced societies are not immune to collapse. Every civilization, no matter how great, exists within a delicate balance with its environment, its resources, and its people. The collapse of these civilizations reminds us that no civilization, no matter how powerful or sophisticated, is invulnerable. The collapse of several of these civilizations, including the Rapa Nui on Easter Island and the Khmer Empire in Angkor, highlights the dangers of environmental degradation. In both cases, the societies thrived initially due to their mastery of the land and natural resources. However, overexploitation, whether it was deforestation, the depletion of soil fertility, or the failure to adapt to climate change, led to the eventual collapse of these societies. The lesson here is urgent and clear. Sustainability is essential for the survival of any civilization. The failure to preserve natural resources and maintain a harmonious relationship with the environment can have catastrophic consequences. As modern societies grapple with issues like climate change, deforestation, and resource depletion, the fate of the Rapa Nui and the Khmer serves as a cautionary tale. We must learn from their mistakes and prioritize sustainable practices if we are to avoid a similar fate. Many of these civilizations faced internal conflict that contributed to their downfall. The ancestral Puebloans, for example, may have experienced social unrest as resources became scarce. The Olmec civilization's decline may have been fueled by internal divisions and competition between factions. The Etruscans were weakened by infighting and fragmentation, making it easier for Rome to absorb their cities. Social cohesion and unity are vital for the longevity of a civilization. Civilizations that are divided or fractured by internal conflict are less resilient in the face of external threats or environmental stress. The strength of a society lies not only in its physical infrastructure or technological achievements, but also in the unity and cooperation of its people. For modern societies, fostering social cohesion, resolving conflicts, and ensuring that all members of society have a stake in its future are crucial for sustaining long-term stability. The rise and fall of these civilizations also highlight the importance of leadership, especially during times of crisis. Many of these civilizations, such as the Etruscans and the Khmer Empire, were led by strong, visionary rulers who oversaw great advancements in culture and infrastructure. However, when these empires faced crises, whether environmental, social, or military, the leadership often faltered, unable to adapt or unite the population to face the challenges. Strong, adaptive leadership is essential during times of crisis. Leaders must be able to recognize when a society's system is no longer sustainable and take action to address the underlying problems. Moreover, they must be able to unite people, not just through military power or political dominance, but by fostering a sense of shared purpose and vision. As we face modern crises, whether climate-related, political, or economic, we must draw inspiration from the leaders who successfully guided their civilizations through adversity and learn from those who failed. Finally, The most powerful lesson from these vanished civilizations is that even when societies collapse, their cultural achievements and legacies often endure. The Moai of Easter Island continue to stand as symbols of the Rapa Nui people's creativity and spiritual beliefs. The stunning temples of Angkor, though abandoned, still attract millions of visitors every year, serving as a reminder of the Khmer Empire's cultural and artistic genius. The advanced urban planning of the Indus Valley civilization, though largely forgotten, continues to fascinate archaeologists and historians alike. In many ways, the legacy of these civilizations lives on in the very ruins they left behind. Their monuments, art, and cultural practices have shaped modern societies in subtle and profound ways. For us, the lesson is clear. While civilizations may fall, culture and knowledge can transcend time. What we create, what we learn, and what we leave behind can continue to inspire future generations long after we are gone. The stories of these vanished civilizations are, in many ways, a warning. They remind us that even the most powerful and seemingly indomitable societies are vulnerable to forces beyond their control. But they also offer hope. Through the ruins and remnants of these great civilizations, we see the resilience of human creativity, the enduring power of culture, and the ability of societies to rebuild and adapt. As we move into an uncertain future grappling with issues like climate change, political instability, and social inequality, we must remember these lessons. We must recognize the fragility of our own civilization and work to build a society that is sustainable, united, and adaptable to change. And, just as importantly, we must remember the importance of leaving a legacy not just of technological advancements, but of culture, art, and wisdom that will endure for generations to come. As we reflect on the civilizations that once shone brightly and then disappeared, we are reminded that the story of humanity is one of constant reinvention, growth, and renewal. The rise and fall of civilizations are not just tales of loss, but of learning, adaptation, and the enduring power of human ingenuity. Thank you for taking this journey through history with me, exploring the rise and fall of some of the world's greatest yet mysterious civilizations. From the grandeur of Angkor to the enigma of Easter Island, their stories continue to resonate and teach us lessons that are as relevant today as they were thousands of years ago. Let us hope we can take these lessons forward as we chart our own path through time.